Hello everyone and welcome to Moon and Sagi. After the Eras Tour ticket sale day disaster, over 300 Taylor Swift fans filed lawsuits against Ticketmaster for violating and neglecting consumer rights. In this episode, we were honored to speak to Swiftie lawyer Jennifer Kinder about this ongoing legal battle against the monopoly and cartel that is Ticketmaster.
So you're known as the Swiftie lawyer, kind of in layman terms, or like that's what I keep seeing you referred to in a lot of media. And so people I think are familiar with like the Swifties are doing something with a lawsuit, but people don't really know beyond that. So what does it mean for you being the Swiftie lawyer?
So we all Swifties as a group had a horrible experience in November and trying to purchase tickets for the Eras tour. And so we come in all different shapes and sizes as the plaintiffs in this cause of action. So we may have verified fans, we may have waitlisted fans, we may have Capital One not fans, but they participated in the Capital One sale. They were going to wait and just participate in the general sale that was canceled. But their experience in trying to purchase tickets for the Eras tour through Ticketmaster was against the law, is basically what we're saying. We're saying that the experience that was set up, how it was set up by Ticketmaster, purposefully and intentionally violated consumer protection laws, and they were actually negligent. We can talk about what negligent means, but they were actually negligent in the way that they performed the ticket sale. So all of us as Swifties were damaged and hurt in a lot of different ways. So it could have been anything from not getting a ticket to overpaying for a ticket, to being disabled and not being able to get a seat in the accessible areas of that venue. So there are a lot of different ways that the plaintiffs and the Swifties were taken advantage of. And what I can tell you is that Swifties are just very well organized and banded together to file the suit. But this is occurring on every single ticket sale. They didn't just target Swifties. They have a practice of doing this in every single ticket sale. And we just happened to be lucky enough to have banded together and filed suit. Does that somewhat cover sort of the basics of how you become a consumer that was violated or damaged?
Yeah, definitely. That provided even more information than I had thought of.
Because what we are is we're consumers, and what we want to participate in something. This happens to be art, live entertainment, right? And what Ticketmaster is doing is controlling all of us in the U.S. as consumers, our ability to experience that art in live entertainment. So they're controlling every single aspect, from the venue to the vendors to the merchandise to your ability to actually purchase a ticket that in somewhere in the range of what Taylor Swift negotiated. I mean, she negotiated ticket prices to be a certain amount, and that's not what occurred in November. And that's not what's occurring in every single artist that's, sale that's being conducted. I don't know, ever since the merger between Live Nation and Ticketmaster, it just continues to get worse. And we can talk about some really outrageous stuff that's going on right now, but it just continues to get worse and worse as they continue to create a higher bar, and the profits are just out of control. The profits that Ticketmaster and Live Nation are making are really disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I was part of that ticket sale with Taylor Swift. I was able to get tickets, but somehow I feel like I still lost in the process.
Right, because you certainly overpaid. You also paid a service fee that was outrageous, and it was not equal in any manner to the service that they provided to you.
I couldn't even pick what tickets I wanted really. And that was something that I felt on a consumer standpoint. I just kind of thought like, I'm willing to spend a lot of money. How come I can't do such a basic thing of pick where I want to sit? Why can't I even do that? And something I noticed about all this that really I don't think is an accident is this kind of silencing almost of like, I'm so happy that there's other Swifties who are banding together and, going against this because there is also another kind of other reaction of just like, just be happy you have tickets. Shut up. You're not supposed to complain. And that I have a big problem with because that just doesn't make sense. Like we're consumers here. We're not, like we're offering a ton of money. Why is this being seen as like we're begging for something?
It is, and it's really troubling. And I think Ticketmaster, I think they're counting on us on it being troubling. So you have a troubled experience by being, someone who did obtain tickets, but not fairly, right? And you're expected not to complain, right? And then, you see articles in Newsweek or in New York Times where, the concert is so good that it almost makes what you went through okay. And that's what you're saying, sort of magnified on a different level, because it's as if they expect a good concert or a full house to somehow offset the violation of the law, the violation of us as consumers, and a good show ultimately, or a sold out show ultimately makes it okay, that the market could bear it. So that somehow makes it okay and we should just go away. And, what I point to is I point to other industries and other moments in history that, but for and without us fighting for these very fundamental freedoms, what continues to happen is that more and more rights are taken advantage of or taken away, and it happens in more and more industries. So if we don't just draw a line in the sand and say, we're unwilling to accept the fact that we could purchase an overpriced ticket, and we're unwilling to accept and walk away and be happy for what we received because you intentionally violated the law. And it's an important conversation that I have with my daughter a lot because, generationally, and with my daughter, it wasn't readily apparent that she was somehow violated by the experience that we went through. Of course, she was upset and we were mad, right? But you do have to talk about it because it has to be fair for everyone. It has to be equal and accessible and fair for everyone, or it's not fair and accessible for anyone. So that overpriced, that overpurchased ticket is just as much of a problem as the person who couldn't get tickets.
Yeah.
And we have to talk about it. We really do have to talk about it, because unless we really go into depth about how we're all still affected by it, because what it does is it just creates a higher and higher bar that's easier for Ticketmaster, and legally becomes more and more challenging.
Definitely. And we're seeing a very literal translation of that right now in the resale market with the StubHub and all the resale sites with selling the Taylor tickets right now. I've been watching these tickets for since before the tour even started, and they keep going up. And for a while there, they would go down a little bit right before the show started. Right. That's not even happening anymore. They just keep going up. So it shows that like either people are willing to pay this, or then you're seeing at some of the shows, some of the seats are going empty, which, it's sold out. So these seats should be full, but they're empty. So to me, that's really alarming because it shows that they're willing to not sell the tickets if they can't sell them at the high price, which tells me there's a level of this is about control. This is not just profits at this point. Like there's a huge level of control here. And I just feel super uneasy about all of this to the point that it's like, I feel ishy about even going to the concert. I mean, I'm still going to the concert, but
No, I know it's super conflicting. It's
yeah,
really, really conflicting because are you standing next to, you may be standing next to a Swiftie, but you're not necessarily standing next to the Swiftie that, that should have been bumped or, because they've been to concerts in the past and it's really conflicting when a person that could only afford a $49 ticket, is unable to go, but the one that could afford the $3,000 ticket you're standing next to. It's really, really conflicting, and it's very, very troubling. The truth is that every one of those individuals should have the opportunity to go and experience it together. But what Ticketmaster is doing is really eliminating an entire group of individuals who are nonetheless worthy, but just not able to purchase a ticket. What we're kind of seeing now as we're looking at the documentation and the data that's coming back is that most of the scalpers and the bots are making about $3,000 a ticket. And what they're doing is they're holding on to the rest of the tickets. They've just profited so much, and like you said, may need to just control the entire issue, so they just control the tickets. They've made so much money on what they have sold that
right.
it's worth it to them to not sell the rest of the tickets at whatever price.
So you had mentioned your daughter was part of this experience. Was that kind of like the catalyst for why you wanted to take this case? Or it sounds deeper, obviously.
She's definitely a huge part of it. We've been to concerts in the past. We regularly attend. She's 12 years old, so ever since she was 5 or 6, we've been attending Taylor Swift concerts. So we've been to Reputation. We had tickets to Loverfest, which was canceled because of COVID, and so we really expected this experience to mirror what we had experienced in the past. And the game is altogether different now. It is nothing like we've experienced even as a verified fan in the past. We were boosted because of merchandise sales. We were boosted because of the previous Loverfest tickets. But this was nothing like any of us had ever seen before. And there's some. So in answer to your question, she is a big part of it. And so when you go home, after I fully expected to be able to have a decent chance at purchasing a ticket, which I was waitlisted. And then on the Capital One sale, I never even made it through the queue before the sale was over and all the tickets were gone. So when you go back home and you need to find a way to communicate the loss to your child, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's not so much about not getting a ticket because there's things that we don't get every day,
right?
That doesn't have anything to do with it. It's the fairness. Mm-hmm. It's having to explain and justify inequity, and it pretty when you're talking to a 12-year-old and things are very black and white to her. And there's a measure of inequity and unfairness, then what you tend to talk about, or at least we did, was how do you balance the scales? I mean, how do you make something right? And that's when the idea, probably the seed was planted about putting the frustration into action.
Yeah, that's awesome that you can offer that to your daughter and show that. It's interesting that you have comparison points to past concerts compared to this one. I've never been able to attend a Taylor Swift concert. I've been a fan from the beginning, but they've always just been too expensive, and I've not been able to be part of that ticket sale. And it's kind of like, if you can't be part of that ticket sale, it's just not happening. But I've always heard that the experience has been pretty good, especially also compared to other big artists. But that this time it was just so beyond. And so I was just really shocked because I had expected something totally different. But in a weird way, it was almost a relief to hear that it was absolutely horrible, like on such a massive scale, because I thought something like was wrong with me that I was so upset with all this. But that's another side thing.
You
And I'm
know, listening to you, I'm really reminded how escalated and how unfair and how really criminal this has become over the past 10 years. It's really, really disheartening to hear, and I hear it over and over and over again, that in past concerts it was never even a realistic possibility. That's not how art in this country should be experienced. Everyone should have access to art in whatever form that it is. And the fact that even 5 years ago you found yourself in a position that you couldn't even participate in the system is disheartening. It's unfair, and it really, really, really must change. And I suppose I wish that maybe we'd begun this fight earlier, back when the merger first occurred, and everyone warned us what this was going to what was going to happen, and this was going to be like.
Yeah, I sometimes I feel that way too. Like I wonder if what would have been different if we started sooner, because the thing is, a lot of people are under this impression that this is sort of like an outcome of, the concert world post pandemic, and that's not really the case. I'm not based in the US, and I'm such a huge fan of music, and I think everyone has the right to experience music and joy. And it's something I'm willing to travel for. And I've traveled to the US, I've traveled to different parts of Europe to experience different concerts, and most of them were actually handled by Ticketmaster. And it always never made sense to me that whenever I wanted to plan a trip around a concert, that I would have to go through Ticketmaster, because for me, I'm more concerned about planning my trip and my plane ticket and my accommodation and all of that. So it's a lot of investment that's being put into this experience. And then Ticketmaster just makes it almost impossible. I remember when I was going to Britney's residency in Las Vegas, a lot of tickets were being withheld through Ticketmaster. I noticed that whenever I log in to try to find the tickets I want, they're unavailable. But then when I ask one of my friends who's based in the US with an American IP address, they're available. So then I would have to find my way around it, in which I would, turn on a hotspot app or something and change my location to the US so I'm able to have access to them. So they've always made finding tickets really difficult. And I'm just so glad that this is being done. And I think it's a lawsuit that's being presented by a large group of people, I think has more impact to potentially take down Ticketmaster and Live Nation. And for me, what I've been asking myself lately is I want to know, how could this impact the concert experience for us as consumers? If they get away with this, if this doesn't go the way we want it to go, how can this change the way we experience live music, in your opinion?
Well, I think that you made a lot of interesting points, some of which I'd like to address in answer to your question about how you're affected. What happens is, I grew up in the 80s, and we could go just on a whim, and we could just go get tickets, and I could go to Country Western, I could go to Madonna. We could go see anything we wanted to. What happens now is you have to plan to go. It's the price of a vacation. And so fewer and fewer people experience concerts now. Kids that are using the money from their jobs to buy tickets can no longer go at all. The way that you as a kid get to go is if your parents happen to be wealthy enough to purchase the tickets for you. Otherwise, as children or kids, you just don't go to concerts because you absolutely don't have enough money to afford the tickets. As adults, fewer and fewer adults go. If you just walk around and ask people how many concerts that they get to go to, you'll be lucky if you find people that go to one concert a year, because you simply can't afford it any longer. And that's not the way it used to be. And that's not what art is. Art is for the experience, however it is that you experience it. That's what art is. And it should be open and available to you in whatever form, whenever and however often you want to experience that. We know that in other countries, the ticket prices are regulated and it's very different. Most of our fans are either going out of the country to go to concerts, and they can plan an entire vacation with the ticket for the price that you stay in the US, stay here, take an Uber to the concert. It's cheaper to go overseas to go to the concert than it is to stay here. And so that's how we've slowly seen how the market, it's not that fewer tickets are sold, or it's that the wealthier individuals are the only ones that are able to go. I think that in part of your earlier comment, how you were talking about it's been bad for a while, and people are trying to blame it on the pandemic. Ticketmaster and Live Nation were fined. They've been in trouble for almost a decade in their practice in bullying venues and manipulating markets and manipulating vendors. They've been in trouble for almost a decade now. And it was predicted at the time that the Justice Department approved this merger. The Justice Department did not recommend the merger, right? So they recommended against it. They advised against it, but Congress passed it. What is happening was predicted back when there were hearings on this merger.
So what do you say to people, who are just kind of like, okay, so yeah, this is a capitalist market. They're just a business. They're trying to make money. There's only so many live performances. So the supply is really low and the demand is really high. Not everyone gets to go. Whoever can afford it can afford it. Seeing a concert isn't a human right. What do you say to that? How do you combat that?
Yeah, we get that a lot. There's a couple of things that I would say to that. As I would say, what we don't buy into is we don't buy into a manipulated market. If I am in the 80s and I stand in line and I don't get a ticket, that it sells out, but I'm in line, then you don't get a ticket. And that's what we teach our kids. You do what's right, you stand in line, you follow the rules, and then you get your fair shot at getting a ticket, but nothing's guaranteed. That's not what this is. This is a completely 100% manipulated market in terms of who's verified to participate, how many tickets are released, the venues that are chosen. Everything is manipulated by Ticketmaster. And so I would say that first, that it's all a manipulation. And then I would remind viewers and listeners that we've had to fight this battle as consumers for lots of different industries. Lawsuits and litigation have sort of been a cornerstone and a backstop against which otherwise businesses just take control over everything. Look at tobacco and smoking. Without lawsuits, without individual lawsuits coming forward about injuries from a tobacco industry that was killing individuals, they would still be killing kids. There would not be warning labels on cigarettes. The industry was changed because people stood up against it. The same with asbestos. Asbestos is it's a fiber. It's an organically grown material, right? That's flame retardant, but it also causes cancer. And without litigation, without, civil justice and access to civil justice, we still have asbestos in our sheetrock, all in our homes, and that causes cancer. And it's litigation. It's the civil justice system that changes things that make things more fair in this country. And I would remind also viewers and listeners that the antitrust laws are in place to protect against the very thing that we filed a lawsuit against. We have filed a lawsuit that they have violated antitrust laws. So Congress enacted laws that protect us as consumers against this very behavior by Ticketmaster. And it should not be okay for anybody that's a consumer in the United States to think it's okay to be exploited and manipulated and overpay. That's not what this country's about. That's not what's fair. And that is fundamentally what's at play here. And the worry is if Ticketmaster grows this industry in a way, other industries are going to use it as a template. I mean, pretty soon your kids' school supplies can be manipulated by a market that can tell you need to pay $20 for pencils, because that's the way that's how illogical Ticketmaster behaves. There's no reason for a consumer to have to pay $8,000 for a ticket. That's a manipulated ticket. That's not a fair market ticket. And if they can do that with live entertainment, you could see it in car sales. You can see it in buying caskets, funeral arrangements for your family, school supplies for your kids. I mean, there's no industry or market that can't be manipulated like this if we let them get away with it.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And I think we definitely need a more transparent consumer experience. And I think this whole thing will benefit other artists as well. I know Beyonce is doing a tour, and one of my friends in the US wanted to see her, and he completely refuses to see her in the US. He is flying to the UK to see Beyonce because he said it totals out to a cheaper experience for me, just, seeing her abroad.
And so is that the best that we can do in this country? The best, the best country in the world, right? With as many protections as we have for consumers, as many laws as we have in place to protect exactly what is happening. I mean, you can't tell me that this is the best that we can do, that an individual that wants to see their favorite artist, an artist that has a message or a lyric or a melody that resonates with them in a moment in time and is very impactful. The best that we can do for that fan is that they have to travel outside the country to experience that art. I mean, it's really disgusting, right? It's just absolutely unreasonable. It's unconscionable. And we just need to continue to fight until things have changed, until we get things changed.
What level of control do you feel the artists have in all of this? I know you had mentioned that Taylor had negotiated prices, and Ticketmaster likely violated those negotiations. A lot of Melanie's research has shown again and again, and you had mentioned that Ticketmaster, they're bullies. They harbor an environment for abuse and control and bullying, and so what control do artists have over this, if any?
I think ultimately it's probably not as much as we would like them to have. And it's probably very little. Unless they want to play out in a cornfield someplace, if your goal is to communicate and to interact with as many fans as you possibly can, and Ticketmaster controls virtually every stadium, then you simply are at the mercy of the system, because now they control vendors, merchandise, the venues. You're literally at the mercy, and it's really troubling, and it's very disappointing that a blue collar worker, somebody that's a waitress in the United States, is the only stop to Ticketmaster. The only person that can stop Ticketmaster is a waitress in California, right? That artists can't band together, and they simply, can't band together and just boycott Ticketmaster. Doesn't seem to be an option. It seems to be that the minimum wage worker in the United States is the only real stop to this monolith that exists in this country. And it's going to take, the average me, I'm a car wreck lawyer, the average Joe is the only thing that's going to stop Ticketmaster, because it doesn't appear that artists can.
There's this big slogan of, break up Ticketmaster or take down Ticketmaster. It's really clear that it's a giant monopoly, and that's why they're able to do all of these things. They're able to violate all these laws again and again. Why do you feel, or what do you say to people who suggest that maybe we can reform this, or maybe we can just pass some laws to make this a little bit better? Why do you think it has to be like they need to be like dissolved or taken down,
taken apart? I think unless there's a systemic breakup of this monopoly, they find a way to piece together their monopolistic power again. And here's some what I think is a good example is they've increased their lobbying on Capitol Hill by millions of dollars now. So you and I, who spend a couple of $100s on a ticket, and we banded together to come against Ticketmaster. I mean, our collective resources are not a fraction of what their collective resources are. We know that it was reported this week that Michael Rapino is going to make $139 million. The CEO of Ticketmaster Live Nation will make $139 million this year. They've invested millions of dollars in their lobbying effort on Capitol Hill. And their goal at this point, probably, I don't know, because they don't talk to me, but if I were them, my goal would be to give a little, but to maintain control and to lobby Congress. And we know that they've created a legislation that they are now proposing on Capitol Hill, which is the Fair Ticketing Act, right? Well, it's a bunch of bullshit. It doesn't reduce their monopolistic behavior. It doesn't reduce their influence in the market. It doesn't change the way that they control and manipulate the market. What they're trying to do is give a little to keep control. And so my belief is without a systemic breakup of Ticketmaster and Live Nation, that you're really not going to get long-term substantive reform. And my belief, the reason that we filed 355 individual lawsuits against Ticketmaster is because class actions, I don't think for the most part are working. Ticketmaster gets sued all the time in class action litigation. They settle cases for millions of dollars and nothing ever changes. And I think much like tobacco or asbestos litigation, it needs to be a systemic, decades-long approach of lawsuits filed at one after the other over and over and over again until it's just not economically viable. Your hope is that Congress steps in. We know that Senator Klobuchar has drafted a bill to reduce the influence and impact of Ticketmaster and Live Nation across the country, and we are fully supportive of that bill. Senator Klobuchar has been a leader on Capitol Hill. She's been an advocate for reform and breakup since she was elected. And what you want that track to pursue the way that it's pursuing. You want it to pursue. And then what I think is probably the best holistic approach is that you attack it on a civil litigation level too. So you're attacking it from two angles: a systemic, mind-numbingly daily pounding on the head of Ticketmaster and Live Nation until there is like systemic reform. My belief is that it needs to be completely broken up. But, what I can do is I can continue to file lawsuits. I can continue to bang the drum over and over again for as many decades as it's going to take, many years as it's going to take. Because, within our lawsuit alone, we've begun to see, it's readily apparent what they're willing to do to protect what they have.
Oh, I love what you just said. And I honestly see so many parallels between this Ticketmaster situation to Free Britney. Our side of the Britney fandom have always discussed how when you try to reform a system that's designed to be exploitative, that only sets back abolition by potentially decades. And I think it's a way for them to stall. I think doing this reform where they make things just a little bit better, enough to shut everyone up, but continue to exploit, I think it's completely useless. And I think something like this must be completely dissolved.
And you really can't underestimate the impact and the power that they have over artists and the way that they influence artists. And I'll give you an example. So on Taylor Swift, you have Taylor Swift, who does not participate in a 360 program or representation by a law firm in LA, right? She has her own representation, so she's not. But if you look at Beyonce is represented in her entertainment or representation packet by the same law firm that represents Ticketmaster. So how in the world do you expect an artist to stand up against a system and a monopoly when the same law firm represents your interest and your contract, where you really your career, right? Because her ability to play and get her music out there and go to venues, and that's what continues to sell her music and build her fandom and do what she wanted to do when she decided to sing to the world, right? When the law firm that represents your career has your career in their hands, right, is also the same law firm that says, I'm also going to represent Ticketmaster and their interests. How in the world do you expect an artist to stand up against that? And how do you expect it to be fair? That's an internal and a built-in conflict of interest. That's like me in a car wreck case representing both sides of a car wreck. We can't do it in car wrecks, and I don't know how it's allowed in the entertainment industry. And you can't tell me that that race and sex also doesn't impact how you are manipulated, managed, and controlled by an industry, right? Taylor Swift is lucky enough to have gotten out of that, right? And to some extent by who represents her in the negotiation of her contracts and where she plays. But other artists aren't that lucky. And other artists' careers are dictated and controlled by the very people that represent Ticketmaster and Live Nation. So it is so intrinsically corrupt, and you just can't convince. I'm a single mom. And a lawyer, and I know what it's like to be a single mom and have to fight against the system by myself. And you can't tell me I don't care how wealthy or popular an artist you are. If you're female and you are also a minority in this country, the system is built to work against you. It just is. And you have to take what you can get within the context of the power that you have. I mean, it's kind of a touchy subject, and I don't want to go out and start crying racism or anything like that, but that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true. I've been to concerts that are not organized by Ticketmaster, like a smaller scale concert or some alternative rock band in a small venue. And these concerts have always been the most easygoing for me, from the starting point of planning my trip, purchasing the ticket, and going there. But whenever Ticketmaster is involved, it's a disaster. And Melanie noted that there's a focus on a handful of huge superstars where they know the demand is high. They know the artist has longevity, and they know that the consumer is going to do whatever it takes to be able to have access to these tickets. And I think Ticketmaster, throughout the past years, have completely mastered the manipulation of a fan's psychology or a consumer's psychology.
Let me tell you, I'll tell you exactly how bad it is. So my belief, we don't have the information forensically because we can't get a judge to rule that we're entitled to it yet. We continue to fight this battle about what we're entitled to. But what I fully expect the evidence is going to show is that verified fan is just another way to say, welcome to the fucking, let me fuck you a million different ways, right? So you get your verified fan status, right? I fully expect that what we're going to find once we get into the forensic data is when they create this verified fan status, and especially based on the popularity of the artist, that what they did is they allowed bots and scalpers in ahead of the verified fans, knowing that ultimately a verified fan is going to pay 2, 3, 4, 20 times more in ticket price. And so that's why you saw 10,000 tickets on the resale market the very day the sale started. Verified fans were still in the queue when ticket prices were upwards of $8,000. we know, and the reason why we added negligence, which is a fancy word to just say that they didn't do what they should have done, we do know and believe that the ticketing purchase software that they purchased on the day of the Taylor Swift Eras Tour sale was too small to accommodate the number of users that they knew would be on the site. And they would know how many people were going to be on the site because they issued the verified fan status. But instead of buying a software program that would accommodate the verified fans that were on this platform, what they do is they decide not to buy and purchase anti-bot and scalper programming and software. So they don't buy that software. And then they do buy a ticketing platform software that is too small for the verified fans that are going to be on that day, thus allowing the bots and scalpers on the site purchase the tickets while you've got, it's just like bringing, animals to a slaughterhouse. You've got your verified fans inside the ticketing house waiting to purchase a ticket, and they have to purchase it from a bot or a scalper at a higher price, knowing all the while that an increased ticket price, a $1,000 ticket price, increases the fees that they get. They sell a $49 ticket. They only make $14 or $15 on their service fees. You sell an $8,000 ticket, and then you make $1,000 in a service fee, knowing that it's going to be turned over several times, more than likely, right? So we're fully expecting that we're going to find that scenario on this ticket sale, which I fully expect is happening on every ticket sale. That added to this, what is our nightmare situation right now that we're like knee deep in, in litigation hell on, is what rights you give up by just logging on to your Ticketmaster account. You probably don't know this, but we have since the lawsuit was filed, found out every single time you log into your Ticketmaster account, you waive every single right you have to be in front of a judge and a jury. What you do by logging on, not searching, not purchasing, not attending, just by logging on, you waive your rights to a judge in a jury trial. You waive your rights to do discovery in a lawsuit. So this new era arbitration, which is a new thing that Ticketmaster has instituted since 2021, they pay a subscription fee to a company to arbitrate their claims. Okay. You tell me how fair it is that you're going to pay somebody to adjudicate your claims, and you think that anybody's going to get a fair shot. Within the context of this arbitration agreement, you can't do any discovery. You can't do any hearings. Your petition is limited to 10 pages. Like virtually every right that you would have in the civil justice system is given away by logging on to your Ticketmaster account. That's what we're dealing with right now. We're going to have hearings in the next month or two about this. But this issue, arbitration, has been litigated over and over again, usually to the detriment of the consumer. But in addition to everything else that Ticketmaster has manipulated in your ability to be a consumer in live entertainment, they also manipulate your ability to recover.
Yeah, I think it's going to be obvious that it should show that Ticketmaster intentionally let bots go first before all of the verified fans. Because I know that Ticket Day, I was watching every single social media site possible,
Right,
looking for the first sign of life, so to speak, like the first actual fan who was like, I got tickets, I'm going to Taylor, I'm so excited. It did not happen until at least 4 or 5 hours after the sale opened.
that's right.
You tell me that not a single fan who, like, all the fans who bought tickets for the first 4 or 5 hours have no social media, didn't talk about
Crazy.
It's not what
Doesn't
happened.
make any sense.
It's bots, 100%.
We know, like I said, how many were already on the resale market. And so and Ticketmaster first says their first comments are, oh, there were just too many Taylor Swift fans. Oh my God, there's 14 million of them. They're everywhere, right? Well, then they changed. When they were on Capitol Hill and in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, they completely changed their story and said, it's those damn bots. It's the damn bots and scalpers. One, because we know that Taylor Swift fans follow the rules. We know that 3 point something registered for verified fans to be verified fan status. We know 1.5 were given verified fan status and codes. The 14 million people that were on the site, on the traffic that day, were not Taylor Swift fans. They were bots and scalpers, which Ticketmaster has finally admitted that they are bots and scalpers. The problem is that they intentionally chose not to have the spyware available because, look at Nike. Nike can keep you from buying 6 pairs of tennis shoes at one time, right? Because there's spyware and there's software available that can find the IP address and they can identify who's a bot and a scalper. Ticketmaster chooses in every ticket sale not to do that. Right. So we know that they allowed them on. We know it wasn't Taylor Swift fans. And look, they have what they, and they put it in plain sight because they have their own verified resale broker. So you can apply on Ticketmaster to be a verified reseller. Well, what the fuck is that? A verified reseller, that's a bot and a scalper. That's what that is. They are licensing their own, verified resale program, their own, because that's the benefit that you get. You sign up to be a verified reseller, then you're guaranteed access. There are certain guarantees that are given to you by signing up, which I'm sure comes with charges and fees or percentages or something like that that's associated with being accepted as a verified reseller. But they've already told us. I mean, that to me is the smoking gun, that they know that bots and scalpers are on and that they have acquiesced and given approval for those people to be on the site to buy those tickets before the real fan ever has access to them. But, they won't even turn over right now. We had a hearing today because they won't even turn over the documents that are associated with our plaintiffs just for their motion to compel arbitration. So they want to take us out of the civil justice system and they want to put us in arbitration. But right now, they won't even give us the information associated with our 355 plaintiffs because they said that we haven't matched up email addresses sufficiently for them to find our plaintiffs on the platform on that day in November. So they're stonewalling, they're dragging their feet. And the judge today gave them another month in order to get, it's actually 6 weeks that he gave them to get that information to us just for their hearing to move us to arbitration. Like, this is how archaic and backwards and how, anti-consumer that we are right now. That's where we are. I mean, I threw a fit today in our hearing. Like, I'm so fucking tired of Ticketmaster and all their bullshit. Like, you can't even imagine. They won't produce evidence because they can't get, they're confused on email addresses associated. You really are going to tell me that you haven't already identified our plaintiffs and their traffic? That's bullshit. They know exactly every place our plaintiffs have been, but they don't want to produce the information. So they drag their feet and, make us go through all of these hurdles and obstacles just to get information that's not even helpful for us. It's just going to be used in their argument to take us out of state to federal court and go to arbitration.
Yeah, that makes no sense. And it's not very reassuring to all the ticket holders. If they can't keep people's emails straight, how are they making sure that everyone who has access to tickets has access to tickets?
It's such a good point. I never even thought about that because I'm so wound up about their feet dragging. But you're exactly right. If they can't keep track of who is who, then they've got a bigger problem than we do. They know it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all a game. It's a system that's set up. It's a system that's set up for consumers to fail. But if I'm communicating anything today to consumers and fans out there, is that this is a fight worth fighting, and we all need to fight it. Because nothing changes if we don't try. Nothing changes if we don't continue to try and battle, and that we do it over and over again. It's not okay, and we need to be unified and supportive of each other and fighting it over and over again for country western, for K-pop, for Taylor Swift, for Beyonce, and for the indie artist, for the WWF wrestler, for the monster truck rally. We need to fight it over and over and over again, and we can never give up. We can't look at it that it's too big of a Goliath. We're just David and we can't fight this monster. We cannot look at it that way. What we have to do is we have to attack it over and over again until the system works for us. So I don't want to be discouraging, but even though the battle seems insurmountable, the ones that really matter and historically, they're worth fighting for, and you have to do it. You just have to fight the fight. So I don't want fans to get discouraged. What I want them to be is I'm hopeful that they're motivated and enthusiastic and passionate and unrelenting.
Yeah, and I think fans and music lovers at large should always remember that we've got the power, because we're the purchasing power. We're the ones buying these tickets. So I think it's definitely a fight that's worth it. You mentioned earlier that just by logging into Ticketmaster, you lose your right to obtaining discovery. Can you explain to our listeners a little bit about what discovery is?
Yeah, so in a lawsuit, probably the single biggest tool that we get as the pursuer of justice is the ability to peel the layers of the onion. We get to pick up the rock and look at what's underneath it. And they call that discovery. So what we want to do is we want to look at everything that happens. So we want to look at forensic data. We want to look at electronic footprints that everybody is leaving. So bots and scalpers. We want to do depositions of people that make the coding and the software. We want to do depositions of people that decided, say, hey, listen, we want to change arbitration from it looking like this to it being this much more stringent. We want taking away the rights of the consumers. But so then you do a deposition. A deposition is where you go into a big room and you sit with a court reporter and you can ask any question that you want that's relevant to the cause of action, so that you can do depositions. We can do written discovery, which is we handwrite out or we type out questions and the defendants have to answer those questions. We can also ask them to produce documents. So show us the iCloud software that you purchased. When did you purchase it? How much did you purchase it for? What size of pipeline did you buy to control traffic? You get to ask for all that documentation. The email communication about why you wanted to use one arbitration group as opposed to another. Why should we change? All the emails that go back and forth between CEOs and heads of the industry. Like in asbestos litigation, you will literally get smoking guns that are emails that say something like this. Well, the chances that this person that we've given cancer to, the chances that they're going to file a lawsuit are only 20%. So we're going to take that chance that this individual that is going to die will not be smart enough or get, intelligent enough to go hire an attorney. And that there's only a small chance that this attorney would take the case and file the lawsuit. So you will literally see in industry emails that will value the price of a life. And my guess is that you see all sorts of emails that go back and forth between Ticketmaster and Live Nation, which is, we're paying out too much by using this arbitration group. The settlements are too high. We need to get another arbitration group that is going to limit discovery, because if we can limit everybody's access to information, well, then how can you get a bigger settlement, right? Because you don't have the evidence to support the violation, right? You don't have gross negligence. You don't have intentional conduct, because you no longer have access to those emails that show that they knowingly intended to do this to a consumer, right? And so what you do is you just lift up. Discovery is the process of lifting up rocks, shining light on a situation, peeling back the layers of an onion. And sometimes in litigation, it's not uncommon for us to start at step one. You are going to do a deposition on the IT person that's managing the software. Well, they'll give us enough information to go to their supervisor and then depose their supervisor. And then you go to then you go to the software program. And the software program will tell you, well, they told me they didn't want a big package. They wanted the small package. They want to make more money, so they got the small package. And so do you see how what you're doing is it's like building a house, right? And brick by brick, you build your lawsuit and you build your fact pattern that you're going to take to a jury. And so that's why discovery is so very important in a civil cause of action, because you can probably guess that defendants typically don't willingly give over their smoking guns. You have to make them give over the evidence that proves your case. And that's, why we're in the battle of a lifetime, is because Ticketmaster would rather spend $6,000 to bring their attorneys to a court hearing than they would be to do what's right and what's fair for consumers. So they'll spend $20 million benefiting a law firm, as opposed to just doing one single solitary thing that's right and fair for a consumer.
It's really interesting to hear you say this, especially considering that, you've mentioned that more of your history is you are a car wreck attorney, which I would imagine, I don't know if it's still called discovery, but there's lots of back and forth of what happened here, of who pays for what, and it's kind of notorious that auto industries and insurances, they never want to cover, they never want to pay. It's always a fighting back and forth. So that's something of what you're already familiar with. And yet this Ticketmaster is so much worse and so many more roadblocks to it. That just
it's
really
so much easier on a rear end collision to get somebody to do what's right than it is the most powerful live entertainment industry in the world to do what's right. And it is so very interesting and troubling that it is so much easier to get an insurance company and a fender bender or a rear end collision to do what's right. It's easier to keep an insurance company accountable than it is to keep Ticketmaster, to hold Ticketmaster accountable. And, the last 10, all it does is show us that the last 10 years that they've gone unregulated, they've just become this monster that's even now more difficult to take down, because they've got 10 years under their belt. They've manipulated the system in such a way that that it makes it really, how ironic. The irony is just never lost on me, that the only person that's going to stop this behemoth is you and I. I mean, it literally is you and I, because class actions haven't stopped their behavior. They're not going to stop their behavior. Legislation right now hasn't done anything to stop them. I mean, in Colorado yesterday, so one of the only states, it looks like California is trying to pass something, but right now, Colorado is the closest that we have to some state legislation that really wants to monitor and put some controls on Ticketmaster. They had a committee hearing yesterday where a representative, Senator Rodriguez in Colorado, literally took out the bot regulation in the subcommittee hearing. He took it out of the legislation. The part of the legislative bill that would require Ticketmaster to disclose what they're doing to identify bots and scalpers, they took out of the bill at the hearing. And so this is really what you're up against. And ironically enough, guess who had gotten a campaign contribution from Ticketmaster right before his election? That state senator. And now that piece from the bill that would have put some teeth in the regulation of bots and scalpers for consumers in Colorado has been taken out of the law. That's what you're up against. And it really will take you and I are the best chance of change. It's you and I.
So they've basically created their website in a way that puts you in a position where you're silenced and you're cornered and you're unable to confront them should there be any wrongdoing from their part.
The antitrust law, they have a word for what they do. It's a legal word, and people don't think it is. But in the context of antitrust litigation, they are the very definition of a cartel. Cartel is a word that's used in antitrust legislation and litigation, and that's the word that we should begin to use for Ticketmaster whenever we talk about them. They are a living, breathing cartel. They need to be treated as such and, dismantled as such.
I recently found out that Ticketmaster also owns a lot of the larger venues as well. So they also, in addition to cornering the consumer, they corner the artist, especially bigger scale artists like Taylor Swift or Beyonce, where they don't have the option but to somehow be affiliated with them or working with them.
That's right. I mean, we suspect that they own about 50% of stadiums now.
Oh, wow.
The only reason that you see SeatGeek and some of the other, like an AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas, it's not owned by Ticketmaster or Live Nation, and that's why the seller is SeatGeek. But the problem with SeatGeek is they are totally under the control and at the mercy of Ticketmaster too. Because what Ticketmaster does is Ticketmaster manipulates SeatGeek and any of the resellers. I mean, it's all golden handcuffs, right? They're all handcuffed. They're very golden. SeatGeek's handcuffs are very golden, but they're nonetheless handcuffed by Ticketmaster because they still manipulate even the venues that aren't owned, the small number of venues that aren't owned by Ticketmaster. They're still controlled by Ticketmaster with what we like to call golden handcuffs. It's all still manipulated and controlled by Ticketmaster. I think it's easy to forget that at the end of the day, we all are consumers. And we're consumers on a very, very fundamental. We really rely on fairness and equity in our day-to-day living. And in the most minute and boring of life's details, we're still very much consumers, and we very much rely on a fair system. So that we can meet just the very basic elements of our lives. And I think that it's not, I don't think it's too young to introduce that concept to elementary school kids, because I think it's a concept that elementary school kids can very easily identify and recognize.
Do you mind talking about what's coming next in this lawsuit and what to look forward to?
So probably our next big hearing is going to be their motion to compel us to arbitration. That's probably going to be one of our next big hearings. We're also probably going to request that this federal court judge remand us back to state court. We filed initially in state court, and Ticketmaster removed us to federal court. We believe that we have a really strong argument to go back to state court. So that will be a hearing that's going to come up in the next month or so that we request to go back to state court. And then we're also going to have, like I said, the very big hearing will be whether or not we're ordered to go to what's called new era arbitration, which post 2021, anyone that is logged on to a Ticketmaster account has agreed to be a member and participate. If they have any dispute in their ticket purchasing or experience on Ticketmaster, you are bound and mandated to go to this new era arbitration. That will probably be our single biggest knockdown, drag out fight to keep that from happening. We believe that it's unconscionable on a variety of levels, but that'll be our two hearings that are coming up that are going to be really important.
Can people still join this lawsuit if they haven't already?
Well, so this particular lawsuit right now, we've closed it off. So it's 355 individual plaintiffs, but we are still taking representation agreements, because what we want to make sure that we've got is, we've got Army 1 on the front lines right now. So we've got 355 of our warriors that are on the front line right now, but we have Army 2, Army 3, and so Army 3 is where we'd like to have some additional people that are interested for any ticket sale at all, because like I said, I think that this is going to be an ongoing war, and we need to be ready for war, and we need to show Ticketmaster that regardless of this outcome, there are 355 Taylor Swift fans that regardless of the outcome of this lawsuit are going to be on board and supportive, and they're going to walk arm in arm and hand in hand with Army 2, 3, and 50 if that's what we need. Because this army is not going to go away regardless of the outcome, and they're going to stand arm in arm and hand in hand with every army that we have that's going to come that follows. So we'd encourage everyone, be that advocate for your kid, be that role model for your kid, sign up in whatever capacity that you can sign up and join the fight, because it's going to take thousands of us is what it's going to need, is thousands of individuals to demand better, to insist better, and to not back down. So yes, we are accepting. We encourage everyone to go onto the website, onto the form, and fill it out and join.
It'd be kind of a funny question, but or maybe this is my own paranoia, and I feel silly saying this, but I wanted to join the lawsuit right away, but part of my hesitation has been that I'm afraid Ticketmaster is going to retaliate against me and take away my tickets.
It's so funny that you say that. We hear that all the time. So ironically enough, I think the fear of an additional breach of contract added to the lawsuit has kept Ticketmaster at bay. And so far, before the suit was filed, we've seen our plaintiffs have their tickets removed. Post filing of the lawsuit, we have not seen a single plaintiff lose their tickets, which again tells me they know exactly who our people are, and they've identified them by their Ticketmaster accounts, because those tickets have not been removed from their account. They've been fully usable. We've had no problems with a single solitary plaintiff post filing of the lawsuit. So I do believe that in a way it's afforded plaintiffs a bit more protection, because I do think that they don't want an added cause of action to the lawsuit, because of course that's a breach of contract. We would have added a breach of contract claim to the cause of action had they done that to any of the plaintiffs. But it's a great question, because we get it all the time. And another question that we get that shouldn't discourage you from becoming a part of the lawsuit is, just because you have tickets doesn't mean that you have no cause of action, because rest assured you paid more than you should have, and you're entitled to the difference of that. Plus you're entitled to their negligent behavior. So you're entitled to damages above and beyond the difference in the ticket price. But just because you've got tickets, you are still very much a viable plaintiff. And I encourage you, in a lot of ways, a lot of that evidence is very compelling, because nothing pisses off a jury more than a consumer getting screwed like that. A mom that's trying to buy tickets for a disabled child and has to spend $3,000 on a ticket that should cost $49 in a accessible, an ADA accessible seat. Nothing pisses a jury off more than a mother who has to do that for their child. So I would encourage everyone to sign up.
Awesome. Thank you. That's so good to know. Thank you so much for doing this, agreeing to speak with us. Thank you so much for fighting the fight and being such an inspiration with all this. And you're just giving so much passion and energy. And I find it so encouraging, especially because this experience has been really I just feel defeated. I feel powerless. It's just like, what can we really do? So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. You're fighting this battle with us. It's not but for social media, podcast, your help in getting the message out, your constant encouragement. I mean, we're all in this together, and you're as much, and your listeners are as much a piece of this and as important to this as any one of the lawyers or the plaintiffs involved. And we just thank you for your support and your continued support. And I look forward to, seeing you very soon and giving you updates and listening to you talking to our clients and their experiences.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. This has been really enlightening. I've been feeling really frustrated for a while, but now I feel encouraged and empowered and very excited to keep having this conversation.
And stay mad.
Thank you so much.
Stay mad.
Yes.
Let's demand more of our world. Let's demand more of our leaders. Let's demand, our kids require so much of us. Let's live up to their expectations. Let's try to create a world that's fair for all of us. And as long as we've got that mantra and we've got the armor and we're continuing to fight the fight, it's all good. Because what we're doing is right and fair, and let's just stay engaged, let's encourage everyone to stay engaged and pissed and involved and verbal, and we'll do this. We will absolutely change this if we continue to fight. We will.